Before we jump into this wild story, let me know down in the comments. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Maybe it's a sunny beach town in Florida, a bustling high-rise in Chicago, or a quiet mountain cabin up in Colorado. I always enjoy seeing just how far these Karen stories of chaos and karma can reach. The summer sun blazed high above the marina, glinting off the polished chrome rails of boats tied neatly in their slips. The air carried a sharp mix of salt water, engine oil, and sunscreen. I stood at the dock, wiping the sweat from my brow, my eyes locked on the glossy white speedboat rocking gently at its moorings. My boat. My pride. Every inch of her had been tuned, scrubbed, and cared for by my own hands. She wasn't just fiberglass and horsepower. She was escape, freedom, the one place I could breathe when the weight of the world pressed in too hard. Then the sound hit me, the guttural roar of her engine coming to life. My stomach lurched. That engine wasn't supposed to be running. I spun around and felt my pulse thunder as the boat pulled away from the dock in a spray of white foam. Two women stood on deck like they were queens of the river, their laughter carrying across the water, harsh and grating. Both of them held brown bottles, clinking them together as though they'd just conquered something worth celebrating. Marla, the older sister by a couple of years, was behind the wheel, her thick frame squeezed into a sleeveless orange floral frock that looked one size too small. Her blonde hair was piled into a messy bun, sweat already slicking her neck, but she wore a smug grin like she'd won a prize. Beside her was Denise, broader in the shoulders, louder in voice, her white floral dress billowing in the breeze as she waved her drink like a victory flag. She leaned against the railing, nearly tipping over as she laughed hysterically. The sight sent a violent jolt through my chest. They weren't supposed to be there. No one was supposed to be on my boat without me. And yet there they were, two neighborhood tyrants who had made my life and everyone else's in the HOA miserable. "Hope you don't mind us borrowing this beauty," Marla shouted, her voice sharp and mocking. "She deserves real ladies at the helm." Denise cackled, slapping her thigh. "Yeah, Captain Boring. We'll bring her back when we're done breaking her in." My fists tightened so hard my knuckles went white. These women weren't just trespassing. They were spitting in my face. I'd heard their snide comments for weeks, little hints that they'd been eyeing the boat. Denise had once leaned across my fence, glass of wine in hand, and teased, "Bet you'd never let girls like us take her for a ride." I'd laughed it off, not thinking they had the audacity to take it. But they had, and they weren't ashamed. Neighbors had gathered along the dock, phones raised, filming the spectacle. Whispers ran through the crowd. Someone muttered, "Oh man, this is going to blow up online." Another chuckled nervously, "They're insane." The boat swung dangerously wide, wake splashing onto nearby kayakers who shouted angrily. Marla whooped like it was all part of the fun. Denise leaned back against the railing, tilting her bottle toward me. "Relax. You'll thank us when she finally sees a good time." Every instinct screamed at me to dive in, swim after them, drag them back by their throats. But I stood frozen, rage simmering under my skin. It wasn't just that they'd taken my boat. It was the violation, the arrogance, the way they turned my hard work into their playground. Then the real danger became obvious. They didn't know how to handle her. Marla twisted the throttle too hard, sending the bow slicing up before crashing down in a spray. Denise stumbled, barely catching herself, and laughed like it was all a thrill ride. The boat veered dangerously close to another dock vessel, narrowly missing it. I shouted across the water, my voice raw, "Cut the engine. You don't know what you're doing." They ignored me. Marla leaned her elbow on the wheel, beer in the other hand, yelling, "Oh look, Captain Safety's having a meltdown. We've got this under control." The engine roared louder, the hull bucking as it cut reckless arcs across the river. My heart pounded, so violently it drowned out the crowd's chatter. I could already see the headlines. Drunk women crash stolen boat, bodies in the water. A young man next to me whispered into his phone, "This is gonna go viral. They're gonna flip that thing." My jaw clenched. Viral. Everyone loved watching chaos from a distance. But I couldn't. That was my boat, my responsibility, and they were endangering every single person within reach of that hull. Denise raised her bottle like a trophy. Try and stop us. The crowd booed, some shouting for them to stop, others laughing at the absurdity. I forced my breath steady. Anger would only get me so far. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed a number I knew by heart. Coast Guard dispatch, came the voice on the other end. This is Officer Daniel Reeves. I have a stolen vessel leaving Bayfront Marina. 2 intoxicated operators on board. Requesting immediate response. The voice sharpened. Copy that, Reeves. We'll coordinate with local patrol. Stay put. Stay put. The words echoed like an insult. Watching from the dock wasn't enough. I couldn't just hand this over and wait. I knew these waters better than anyone. And I knew those women. They would push until something snapped. My eyes tracked them as they sped upriver. Denise throwing empty cans into the wake like confetti. The sight made my jaw tighten. Polluting the water, risking lives, all with the smug belief that rules didn't apply to them. I slid the phone back into my pocket. My reflection stared up at me from the water's surface, jaw set, eyes narrowed. I wasn't going to be the helpless victim in their story. Not today. Don't do anything stupid, Reeves, a neighbor muttered as he saw me walking quickly down the dock. But it wasn't stupid. It was necessary. I reached the smaller craft tied to my slip, the rescue boat I used for training drills and emergency patrols. Its engine purred to life with a single twist of the key, the vibration steady, reassuring. I strapped on my vest, the Coast Guard insignia bold against my chest. Out on the water, Marla had cranked the music louder, a tinny pop song blaring from a portable speaker. Denise climbed onto the bow, arms wide like she was the star of some drunken movie scene. The wake splashed against the shore, rattling the reeds and shaking smaller boats. Who? This is freedom, baby, Denise screamed. Marla howled with laughter, steering one-handed as if daring fate to take a swing at her. I gripped the wheel tighter, guiding my boat away from the dock. The crowd parted, murmuring, filming, shouting advice I didn't need. My gaze was locked on the fleeing speck of white cutting through the blue-green river. Every muscle in my body thrummed with focus. They thought this was a joyride, a harmless prank. They thought the rules didn't apply, that consequences never came. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. The patrol sirens wailed faintly in the distance, red and blue lights beginning to shimmer against the far bend of the river. I angled my boat into the wake, the bow rising as I poured on the throttle. My voice low, steady, a promise to myself as much as to them. You picked the wrong sailor to mess with. And with that, I cut through the water, chasing down the chaos they had unleashed, determination burning hotter than the sun beating down from above. The crowd's cheers and jeers faded behind me. Ahead lay the stolen boat, 2 drunken tyrants, and a storm of justice they couldn't outrun. The hunt had begun. The river widened as the sisters tore upriver, the stolen boat lurching from side to side in their clumsy hands. Spray fanned into the air, sparkling in the sun, but there was nothing beautiful about it. Every swerve sent a fresh jolt through me. They weren't simply joyriding anymore. They were courting disaster. Kayakers paddled frantically out of the way. A fishing skiff rocked violently as Marla cut too close, its owner cursing after them. From my smaller craft, I tracked their every move, one hand steady on the wheel, the other near the radio mic clipped to my vest. My training told me to wait for backup, to let the patrol boats box them in. But my gut told me the sisters would do something reckless before help arrived. Marla's orange floral dress clung to her as she leaned forward, glaring back over her shoulder like she was proving something to me personally. Denise, clumsy and overconfident, stood unsteadily at the bow, shouting into the wind, "Nobody owns the river, baby." She almost toppled with the force of her own words, grabbing the rail at the last second, laughing until her face flushed red. Pull the throttle back. I shouted across the water through the loudhailer. My voice echoed, hard and commanding. "You're endangering lives." Denise cupped her hands to her mouth, mocking my tone. "You're endangering lives." Then she burst out laughing, tipping her bottle until amber liquid splashed over her dress. Marla barked her own retort. "Relax, hero." We've got it under control. HOA privileges, remember? Everything here belongs to us. The sheer gall of it boiled through my veins. HOA privileges. As if paying dues somehow entitled them to theft, to breaking the law. I had seen arrogance before, but this was something else. They weren't oblivious. They knew exactly what they were doing, and their pleasure came from spitting in the face of anyone who dared call them out. My craft surged over the rolling wake they left behind. Behind me, the faint flash of patrol boat lights grew stronger, closer. I keyed my mic. This is Reeves. I have visual. Target vessel occupied by 2 intoxicated operators. They are failing to comply. Copy, Reeves, came the calm voice over the line. We're closing in on their position. Maintain pursuit, but avoid direct confrontation until backup is in range. Easy for them to say. I wasn't watching from a control room. I was close enough to see the sweat on Marla's temple, the wild gleam in Denise's eyes. The sisters weren't slowing down. If anything, they grew more frantic, as though the sirens chasing them fed their mania. Denise shouted, faster. Show them who's boss. Marla slammed the throttle forward, but instead of surging ahead, the engine sputtered faintly, the bow dipping in protest. Her grin faltered. Why isn't it going faster? Denise snapped, wobbling on her feet. Relax, Marla barked, though her eyes darted nervously to the console. She twisted the throttle again. The boat responded sluggishly, power draining like air from a balloon. It's fine. Just needs more gas. But it wasn't gas. My thumb grazed the hidden fob in my pocket. The small device synced to my boat's emergency systems. The GPS tracker pulsed steadily on the handheld screen by my seat, feeding me their exact speed, heading, even engine vitals. One switch, and I could choke power from the engine entirely. Not yet. Timing was everything. I let the malfunction grow subtle at first, just enough to rattle them. Denise stomped a foot on the deck. This thing's a piece of junk. Marla hissed. Shut up and let me drive. She jerked the wheel hard, the boat swerving dangerously, nearly colliding with the patrol vessel closing in from the east. A voice boomed from its loudspeaker. Cut your engine immediately. You are ordered to stop. The sisters screamed over it, desperate to drown out authority with their chaos. Denise pitched the empty bottle into the river, her voice ragged from yelling. We're not stopping. You can't make us. The patrol boat matched their turn, sirens wailing, warning lights bouncing off the water in fractured flashes. I pressed the radio again. This is Reeves. Be advised, I have remote control of the vessel's engine systems. Requesting clearance to initiate force stop. Static buzzed, then the voice responded firmly. Proceed. Safety of civilians is priority. That was all I needed. I flicked the switch. Instantly, the engine groaned. The sisters lurched forward as speed bled away, momentum carrying the boat only a few more yards before it stuttered to a crawl. Their shouts turned frantic. What's happening? Denise shrieked, clinging to the railing as the boat rocked. Marla slammed her palm on the console, twisting knobs, jamming the throttle up and down. It's broken. It's broken. I allowed myself a grim smile as I pulled closer, keeping my craft steady just off their starboard. Engine's fine. She just doesn't answer to thieves. Their heads snapped toward me, fury mixing with dawning panic. You, Marla screeched, face blotched red. You set us up. You sabotaged it. You stole federal property, I shot back, voice carrying over the waves. And you endangered lives doing it. This is over. No, it's not over. Denise shouted, hair whipping around her flushed face. We're victims. He gave us permission. The patrol boats closed the circle, forming a wall of flashing lights and steel around the immobilized vessel. Loudspeakers crackled with final warnings. Step away from the console. Hands visible. Comply immediately. Marla spun in place like a cornered animal, pointing toward the patrol boats. This is harassment. We're board members of the HOA. We'll sue every last one of you. Denise screamed alongside her, stomping her foot like a child denied a toy. We'll ruin you all. Their voices bounced across the water, shrill, defiant, but hollow. For the first time, I saw it, the thin edge of fear cracking through their bravado. They were realizing they were trapped, surrounded, their arrogance unraveling in front of everyone who had gathered along the shoreline. I throttled back slightly, letting the silence between sirens linger before I spoke. My words carried calm, cold finality. This isn't your neighborhood, Marla. This isn't your lawn. This is federal water. And out here, your titles mean nothing. The sisters stood frozen, mouths opening and closing without words, beer cans rolling at their feet as the patrol crews prepared to board. The crowd on shore erupted, their cheers carried faintly across the water, phones capturing every humiliating second. The sisters had wanted attention, and now they had it magnified, amplified, undeniable. As I cut my engine, drifting closer with steady precision, I locked eyes with them one final time. They had stolen my boat, mocked me, endangered lives, but their reckoning had only just begun. Flashing lights bathed their faces. Sirens screamed above the pounding of waves. Officers shouted orders. The sisters clutched the railing, wild-eyed, their kingdom collapsing around them. And I knew, as my craft drew even, that the true downfall was only seconds away. The patrol boats closed in with a thunder of engines, their wakes slapping against the immobilized vessel until it rocked violently beneath the sisters' feet. Marla's grip on the wheel tightened, as if clinging to authority she no longer possessed. Denise staggered to the stern, her arms flailing in drunken protest as the loudspeaker blared again, commanding them to surrender. Their mouths opened in furious denial, but their words were swallowed by the sirens and the rising chant of onlookers lining the shore. What had begun as a reckless joyride was now a stage, and their humiliation had an eager audience. 2 officers vaulted aboard, boots thudding against the deck, movements crisp and deliberate. One snatched the bottle from Denise's hand and flung it into a containment bag. The other stepped between Marla and the wheel, voice clipped and firm. Step away from the controls. Now, Marla tried to laugh, a brittle, desperate sound. You don't understand. We're respected members of the HOA. This man gave us permission. She pointed at me, spitting the words like venom. He set us up. The officer didn't even glance at me. Ma'am, you are under arrest for theft, boating under the influence, and reckless endangerment. Denise's laughter cracked into sobs. It was just a joke. Just a little fun. Tell that to the families you nearly capsized, I muttered under my breath, though the words carried across the water, sharp as a blade. Cuffs clicked into place, steel glinting in the sunlight. The sisters thrashed, their protests unraveling into incoherent shouts. Marla shrieked about lawsuits, Denise sobbed about conspiracies, but the officers moved with the steady patience of men who had seen every excuse before. As they were hauled to the patrol boat, roar of cheers rose from the crowd on shore. Phones captured every angle. 2 women who had spent years lording over neighbors now reduced to struggling criminals, faces twisted in disbelief. I shut down my engine and let my craft drift. For a moment, I simply watched as the boat I had poured sweat and hours into was towed back toward the marina. My vessel bore scratches on her hull and dents from the sisters' recklessness, but she was still intact. That mattered more than I wanted to admit. I had fought for control, and I had won. But justice wasn't finished. News of the incident spread before the sisters even reached land. Videos of them screaming and flailing against arrest flooded social media, captions sharp and merciless. HOA Karen Steelboat, get wrecked by Coast Guard. Comment sections filled with laughter, memes multiplying by the minute. Their reputations didn't just crumble. They exploded into public ridicule. By the time their mugshots were released, the HOA board had issued a statement condemning their behavior. Their actions do not represent our community, it read. The very community they had bullied was now united in disowning them. Court followed swiftly. Charges stacked against them like bricks. Unauthorized use of a vessel, boating under the influence, reckless endangerment, littering. The prosecution needed little effort. The evidence was overwhelming, and the viral footage left no room for denial. The sisters sat red-faced and rigid in the courtroom, their floral dresses traded for ill-fitting blouses, their arrogance shrinking by the day. I sat in the gallery, arms crossed, watching as their lawyer tried to spin tales of misunderstanding, of neighborhood feuds, of alcohol clouding judgment. None of it mattered. The jury needed less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. When the sentence was read, Marla's voice cracked with fury. "This is your fault," she screamed across the courtroom, eyes locking on mine. "You ruined us." I met her glare with calm certainty. "You ruined yourselves." The judge ordered heavy fines, license revocations, and restitution for damages to my boat and the vessels they had endangered. But the harshest blow was the humiliation. Their fall was public, spectacular, irreversible. In the weeks that followed, their world shrank. They lost their HOA positions, stripped of the authority they had once wielded like a weapon. Their neighbors avoided them, conversations stopping when they entered a room. Invitations disappeared. Even their friends, the ones who had laughed at their antics, vanished into silence. The sisters became pariahs in the very streets they had once ruled. I focused on repairing the damage to my boat, each replaced panel and polished surface erasing the chaos they had left behind. Neighbors came by to thank me, some offering help, others just shaking their heads in disbelief at how far things had gone. Every gesture reminded me of something important. Arrogance always collapses under its own weight, sooner or later. One afternoon, I took her out again, the boat gliding smooth, the engine purring like it had before. The river sparkled calm, as if washing away the memory of that day. But as I returned toward the marina, I saw them. Marla and Denise stood on the bank in neon safety vests, trash bags clutched in their hands, court-ordered community service written in every miserable line of their posture. Their faces flushed under the sun, sweat streaking their temples. They bent to pick up cans from the mud, tossing them into bags with jerky, resentful motions. I slowed just enough to let the moment hang. Denise spotted me first, her glare venomous, muttering something I couldn't hear. Marla turned, her expression a mask of seething humiliation. I raised a hand in a casual wave, letting a smile tug at my lips. "Enjoy the waterfront, ladies." Just from the shore. Their glares followed me as I throttled forward, their figures shrinking behind me, framed by the piles of garbage they now labored to collect. The sun glinted on the water, dazzling, and I let the irony settle deep in my chest. They had stolen my boat to taste power, to mock control, to declare themselves untouchable. But in the end, they had been reduced to cleaning the very river they polluted. The crowd that once jeered them now ignored them. The cameras that once adored their chaos now captured only their downfall. And I, steady at the helm, had reclaimed everything they tried to strip away. As the current carried me onward, I thought of one last truth, sharp and undeniable. Water reflects. Whatever you throw into it, it throws back at you. The sisters had thrown arrogance, recklessness, and contempt. And now, what stared back from the rippling surface was nothing but their own ruin. And for me, the river was quiet again, as it should have always been.